Did you know that Pontiac once released a Firebird that was a better performer than the hottest Corvette of the time at a fraction of the price? That's right, Pontiac always played by its own rules, showcasing its rebellious spirit within the GM conglomerate, and the year 1991 was probably the last time this iconic brand shined at its best. This is the story of the Pontiac Firehawk, a model that challenged the status quo and rewrote the history of the American automotive industry. Pontiac Firehawk, muscle's second chance. The legend says that the actual reason for Pontiac's discontinuation as a brand in 2009 wasn't the fact that Buick was selling more than 1 million cars in China annually at the time. It wasn't the rivalry between Chevy and Pontiac either. It was because the upper management was feeling intolerant for a long time. Because Pontiac has always been a part of GM that liked to do things on its own. It was a black sheep in the family that never respected hierarchy. In that hierarchy, Chevy believed that the place of the company's top performer was reserved for its jewel, the Corvette. Through most of the company's history, that was the case, but then Pontiac decided to break the rules and made a car that was as fast but significantly cheaper. This is the story of the most dangerous raptor of all Pontiac birds. This is the story about the Firehawk, one of the greatest internal upsets in GM's history. The golden era of muscle cars was long gone. Decades of oil crisis, strict emissions regulation, and high insurance costs almost wiped out the muscle car segment. But the Firebird was one of the rare models that survived. The late 1980s finally brought some change, and once again, it seemed possible to show muscle to the world. It was time for the third-generation Firebird to reach unseen heights. How it started. As mentioned, circumstances were different compared to the 70s and early 80s. It seemed like there was finally a light at the end of the tunnel and that the misery would finally end. And the first guy that saw that was Ed Hamburger, a well-known name in the world of American motorsports. He started at Mopar but soon enough founded a company called Hamburger Oil Pans, which would quickly become one of the leaders in the field. In the second half of 1980, it was time for another big step. This time, he established the SLP, which is short for Street Legal Performance, with the idea of bringing stumbling muscle car legends back to where they belong. Of course, the focus was on the GM lineup, particularly the two legends and two in-house rivals, Camaro and Firebird. It didn't take much time before SLP made headlines. It introduced a performance package for these models, completely emissions legal, with significant power upgrades on engines that were coming out of assembly lines with no more than 200 horsepower. As usual, Pontiac was the bad guy, as it decided to avoid corporate rules and give its lineup a bit of pepper. It recognized the SLP's achievement and decided to collaborate to make the Firebird more capable and improve its public image. So, the two companies teamed up and started working on a machine that would eventually come up as a performance bargain, a hot rod that would offer Corvette-level performance at a significantly lower price. The base model was priced already at around $40,000, and it was quicker on the straight line than an Acura NSX and a Ferrari 348. But the real deal would come with the optional package, with some pretty serious racing upgrades, which would raise the price to $52,000, doubling the cost of the Trans Am GTA. But once again, due to the fact that they didn't play by GM rules, Pontiac decided to keep a low profile. The Firehawk was never officially advertised, but it was sold in Pontiac dealerships with a proper warranty on all of its upgraded parts. It was the year 1991, and after almost 2 decades, Pontiac was in the place where it belongs, the icon of American automotive history. Powertrain and Performance. So what did SLP do? Well, they took the regular Firebird as the basis with its legendary L98 small block engine. Today, this engine is legendary for its tuning potential, but back in 1991, with all those emissions rules on their back, GM was forced to keep power figures relatively low. In this case, that was around 235 horsepower. So what Hamburger did was adding a set of significant upgrades, starting from ported heads, lightweight pistons, forged crankshaft, new connecting rods, and a new intake system. All these things changed the engine dramatically, with the max output going all the way up to 360 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. But SLP didn't stop there. Besides the engine upgrade, the Firehawk also got a ZF 6-speed manual transmission from the C4 Corvette, which was also one of the most significant upgrades, considering that manual transmission wasn't available in the third-generation Firebird with this engine. Then there was the aluminum drive shaft, and finally, a Dana 44 rear axle, sturdy enough to stand this level of performance. What Pontiac and SLP created was a monster, available already at $40,000, with a level of performance comparable with most exotic cars of the era. The car weighed 3,400 pounds, but it was able to hit 60 miles per hour in just 4.6 seconds and complete a quarter mile in under 13 seconds. Those were Chevy Corvette ZR1 numbers for significantly less money. But that raw power wasn't easy to handle, especially at higher speeds. So, the two companies decided to offer an additional package with tuning upgrades that would make the Firehawk more exclusive than the ZR1 in some ways. For an extra $11,000, the Firehawk would come with features that were normally reserved for six-figure exotic cars, starting from 4-piston brake calipers, the same you'd find in the Ferrari F40. This package also included a lightweight aluminum hood, upgraded racing seats, a roll bar, and numerous other enhancements. The Firehawk became the perfect track machine, but that did come at some cost. Ruthless Performance. The Firehawk offered an impressive level of performance, but in their quest for the ultimate driving machine, SLP and Pontiac didn't want any compromise. There was no room for enhancements in areas like comfort and convenience. This was a genuine hot rod of the modern era, and it wasn't for someone who was looking for a cushy ride. This one was all about raw power, almost completely free of any interior refinement and ride quality. Speaking of ride quality, reviews from various publications of the time noted that the ride on public roads was extremely harsh due to low-profile tires and suspension that was designed for track. But engineers achieved their goal. They made a Firebird that was at the same level as the hottest Corvette of the time, but still significantly cheaper. The Firehawk, with all the upgrades, was around $52,000, $16,000 south of the ZR1. Needless to say, the guys at Chevy were furious, even though the Corvette offered superior livability with a nicer interior, better road manners, and even better visibility. Pontiac Rarebird and further disappointment. At the time the Firehawk was launched, the third-generation Firebird was already close to the end of its production cycle. That generation was introduced way back in 1982, and it was pretty clear that not many examples of this high-performance version would be produced. Eventually, there will be 25 units in total, 8 of them being produced in 1991 and 17 more in 1992. But from today's perspective, those limited numbers only did a favor, making it very special, one of the most sought-after collector's items among lovers of the American automotive industry. The disappointment came when the 4th-generation Firebird rolled out. Modern styling, new tech, the crowd was so excited when they heard that the Firehawk would carry on, but then it was time for an ugly truth. Other than the name, nothing was so special about the new model. The LT1 engine was installed, but it was significantly less capable, with no more than 300 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. Pontiac did offer options like lightweight hood and performance exhaust, but most of the genuine upgrades from the original were missing. The Firehawk became more refined and more civilized. It marked a big departure from its predecessor, so despite the better commercial success with 201 units sold only in 1993, it never became a legend. Later model years brought some enhancements, including several power boosts, with the final 2002 model putting out 345 horsepower, but once again, it never became as iconic as the original. Firehawk's legacy. So, what would be the Firehawk's place in American automotive history? Despite the disappointments with subsequent generations, the Firehawk's legacy is huge, as it represents one of the last times when Pontiac showed its daring spirit in the era when muscle cars were thought to be fading into obscurity. Powerful upgrades and track-ready design made much more than a performance car. Pontiac disturbed the automotive hierarchy by offering supercar performance at a fraction of the Corvette's price. That, along with the extremely limited number of examples produced, made the Firehawk a sought-after collector's item, a car that left an indelible mark on the car community. Most importantly, it showed what a Pontiac could have been if it weren't for the unfortunate circumstances that ultimately led to the brand's demise 2 decades later. What do you think of the Pontiac Firehawk? Could this be one of the biggest unsung heroes in American automotive history? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.